He walked away then, and left me sitting on the edge of the tank to ponder which is worse, an infinite loop of podcast episodes that you don't remember, or a single bad episode that's stuck in your head forever.
I don't know that I have an answer to that. It might be the single bad episode stuck in your head forever. I guess probably. Yeah.
It would at least give you something to talk about at parties.
That's true.
You won't believe what I listened to last week. These two fucking idiots talking about sci-fi books.
And the week before that. And the week before that. Welcome to Science Fiction Book Club, a podcast for bookworms and stargazers, where in every episode we dive into the pages of our favorite science fiction novels to break down the big ideas, ask the nerdy questions, and maybe, just maybe, learn a little bit about ourselves along the way. I'm your host, Opsa, and as always with me is the one and only Abu. With his dap.
I just dabbed on camera for you audio-only folks.
That's right.
So we're here to finish Mickey7!
Indeed we are.
This has been a long journey on Niflheim for us, I think. But
You're not wrong.
We are at Journey's End. We
That's
are
right.
reading the rest of the book today.
Yep.
I'm excited to get into it. Before we do, as always, folks, let's take care of some housekeeping. First and foremost, spoiler warning, today's easy. Make sure you've read Mickey7 by Edward Ashton in its entirety, start to finish.
That's right.
That's what we'll be talking about today.
And as always, we encourage you to read along with us, share your thoughts, email us at sci-fi bookclubpod@loreparty.com, join the Patreon at patreon.com/sci-fi bookclubpod. We've got all sorts of reading guides there, discussion questions, bonus clips, bloopers, all the goodies. And it's also where you'll find our Discord, where we like to keep the nerdy sci-fi discussions going with fellow readers in the community.
That's right. And all of those links are in the show notes below, so once you're done listening, go check all of that out. All right, Opsa, here's the game plan for today's episode. The same as all of our book club episodes. We'll begin by summarizing the chapters that were assigned for today's reading. Then we'll talk about some impressions of the book, at this point, the entirety of the book. And finally, we will wrap up today's conversation by diving deep into our sci-fi analysis and talking about some big ideas
That's right.
that we want to dig into. So, folks, before we get into all of that, let's take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we are finishing up Mickey7 by Edward Ashton.
Sergeant and Mr. Smith, you're gonna love this house.
Bunk beds in a closet?
There's no field manual for finding the right home. But when you do, USAA Homeowners Insurance can help protect it the right way. Restrictions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, listeners. Let's start with our brief summary of the chapters 18 through 27, the last chapters of this book. In chapter 18, Kat confronts Mickey7 about being a multiple.
Uh-oh.
But despite her revulsion, it doesn't seem like she'll rat him out to Marshall.
Okay.
Mickey7 returns to his bunk, only to find Mickey8 and Nasha in bed, and one thing leads to another, and we've got our threesome. This whole book has been leading up to it. We're here.
Yeah.
We've had it.
finally here.
They enjoy a post-threesome cuddle, but
Sure.
Kat shows up,
Uh-oh.
and this is the last straw for her. She runs off to tell security.
Gross. Threesomes.
That's the straw that broke her back. Of course, at that point, security goons show up and arrest both the Mickeys and Nasha.
That's right. Okay, chapter 19, folks. We flash back to the early days of the mission as the crew makes landfall on Niflheim, and we're told about this series of horrific medical experiments that Mickey has to undergo. To her credit, Nasha stays with Mickey through all of these awful deaths that he experiences. And, she does what she can to support him from the other side of a thick, sealed metal door as he suffers on the other side. Mickey, at one point during the experimentation, refuses to keep his scanning helmet on, the helmet that copies his consciousness so that the next Mickey can download it. He doesn't want to remember these horrific deaths.
Of course not.
Of course not. How traumatizing would that be? But the head scientist threatens to keep throwing him in the testing chamber with no shots to fight off the bacteria and letting him die over and over and over and over again until he gets the picture. Quote, "He walked away then and left me sitting naked on the edge of the tank to ponder which is worse, an infinite loop of torment that you don't remember a bit of, or a single bad death that's stuck in your head forever."
Oof.
A tough one.
Yeah.
Eventually, a vaccine that fights the local sort of germs of Niflheim is developed thanks to all of this Mickey experimentation. Mickey is let out of the chamber and Nasha very happy, but unfortunately they can't fornicate yet because the doctor rushes in and informs Mickey-5 that a mysterious brain tumor has been detected. And so he goes back in the chamber and dies to parasitic brainworms that eat him from the inside out.
Okay.
Brutal stuff.
Yeah, graphic. Continuing in chapters 20 and 21, Nasha and the Mickeys are thrown into prison until Marshall is ready to deal with them. During his grilling of the two Mickeys, Marshall reveals that the colony is on a war footing and preparing for potential combat against the Creepers.
Uh-oh.
Mickey7 reveals what he experienced in the tunnels and his theory on the intelligent Creepers.
Yeah.
The Mickeys and Nasha are then taken to the Cycler and given an ultimatum. Take on a suicide mission against the Creepers or get thrown down the Cycler.
Wow. Not much of a choice.
I mean, it sounds like death either way.
Yeah. All right, chapter 22, folks. This was great, actually. I loved this chapter.
Agreed.
We get a history lesson on the Bubble War.
Right.
Which, in short, in brief, is a horrific 3-week conflict that happened ages ago on Earth using new antimatter bombs that wiped out over half the population on Earth.
Yeah.
These are non-destructive bombs, we're told, that explode and kill all organic life, basically.
Right.
But leave the inorganic structures and infrastructure, buildings, roads, all of that completely intact.
Right.
Just 20 years after this horrific war, after the Bubble War, the first colony ship was launched, and humanity has basically been running away from that possibility of self-annihilation ever since. This is the inciting incident for the diaspora. This is why humanity colonizes planets and why it's so important to their culture to do so.
Honestly, satisfying. That was really satisfying.
Yeah. I was a big fan of this. In a dark note at the end of this chapter, it's actually hinted that Earth itself might be destroyed at this point, and the only reason humanity is even still alive is because the diaspora pushed humanity to colonize and expand in order to avoid extinction.
Right.
Quote, "It was clear to those people that if humanity stayed in one place, we'd eventually kill one another, and they were almost certainly right. Nobody has heard a peep out of old Earth in over 600 years." End quote.
100%. We killed ourselves. There's not a chance. They were absolutely right to leave.
They were.
All right. Well, moving on. In chapter 23, both Mickeys return to the tunnels that Seven fell into with antimatter bombs strapped to their backs.
Hello.
All right. Mickey7 is, of course, hesitant about committing effectively genocide, against the Creepers, who, we'll remember, saved his life. Mm-hmm. But 8 is all gung-ho about completing the mission. No hesitation, no doubts.
hesitation.
He's in.
Yep.
They end up splitting up, and after some time, 8 is killed.
I would say R.I.P., but
How much do we care? On the other hand, Mickey7 ends up meeting the Prime Creeper.
yes.
Who successfully communicates to him via the ocular, and they negotiate.
That's right. And this is our explanation for the mysterious garbled
Right,
messaging
right.
that Mickey's been
It
receiving.
wasn't sleep texting, as
No.
he first suspected.
No. What a dumb thing to suspect in the first place, but sure. All right. Chapter 24 is a very short one, literally like a page and a half. We get a very brief history lesson on a colony called Longshot, one of the rare missions where humanity ended up coexisting peacefully with the natives. The chapter ends on this interesting quote. The histories don't say much about why this encounter turned out so differently from all the others. I've got a theory, though. By the time they finally bumped into one another, the colonists were well established enough to stop being constantly afraid. Time. That's the key. We just need time. End quote.
Fascinating. Well, in chapter 25, Mickey7 has a tense standoff with Marshall as he explains the situation. He's returned to the base, and he's prepared to tell them that the Creepers have Mickey 8's bomb.
Oh, no.
Now it's a stalemate of mutually assured destruction if anyone acts too hastily.
Mm-hmm.
Marshall is, of course, totally livid. He cannot.
This guy.
He cannot appreciate.
His mustache is trembling.
Truly. And he, of course, feels that Mickey has betrayed his fellow humans and wants to kill him, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But Mickey makes a strong case that he's their only liaison with the Creepers, and keeping him around assures peaceful negotiations.
Fair point.
Later, Mickey reveals to Nasha that he just kind of winged it with the negotiations, and the language culture barrier was too tough to actually
Oh my God.
get too much across. But the Creepers have promised to leave the humans alone as long as they stay away from their tunnels. But who knows how long that'll last.
Yeah. Or what their definition of leave us alone is.
That's
you
right.
know? There's like huge language and culture barriers. here.
Absolutely.
Mickey did his best. Okay. Last 2 chapters. This fucking book wouldn't be complete unless we had yet again another goddamn meeting with Marshall in his office.
It's just so necessary, though.
It's so necessary to constantly keep on going back to
the
Marshall's
rule of
office.
threes, okay? We need another one.
Okay, chapter 26 is a meeting with Marshall. This one is different, though. Instead of being grilled, Mickey at this point basically says, fuck you to the commander and quits his role as expendable.
Mic drop.
This is an unprecedented resignation.
Yeah.
No one in the history of Expendables has ever retired from the job. There is no retirement
There's no
package.
retirement. That's right.
Mickey is the first.
Yeah.
He will no longer be the expendable on the Drakkar mission. We then end the book on chapter 27 as things are looking brighter for the colony. Literally, the temperature is getting warmer. The sun is out. The ice is melting.
Yeah.
Things are warming up. The colonists have also begun to overcome their like food and resource shortages that they
Right.
were struggling with at the start. And there has been peace with the Creepers. No other incidents have occurred. So things are looking up. Mickey in this chapter at the end of the book here takes Nasha out to a hiding spot. And this is where he reveals to her that he's been bluffing this whole time.
Of course he has. Man.
The Creepers don't actually have an antimatter bomb. He
Yeah.
just hid it in the woods here. And he's just been bluffing with Marshall this entire time.
Yeah.
And his sort of like, Nasha's like, what's your plan? What's the long-term goal here?
Plan? What
Mickey-
that?
Mickey's genius plan
Yeah.
is to basically keep this bluff going until Marshall dies at some
Yeah.
point, and then come out here, grab this bomb that he's hidden, and take it to whoever the new commander is, and pretend that the Creepers have returned the bomb in some sort of gesture of goodwill. Not the most nuanced plan, I will say.
Well, it's like a 60-year gambit, you know?
Right.
What if he falls down a crevice again?
Yeah.
And
Really hoping Marshall dies first,
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
Like, what if Mickey dies and no one knows where the bomb is. Anyway,
Yeah.
obviously a lot of holes in this plan, but Mickey, for what it's worth, has not been a genius this book in many
No.
ways. So this is definitely on brand for him.
He did somehow save them in the end.
Yeah,
with
kind
his
of a genius
actions,
ploy with the buff.
I guess, but
Ballsy, at least.
ballsy, yeah. And then they walk off into the sunset.
Into the Niflheim sunset.
That's right.
That's Mickey7 by Edward Ashton, folks. What did you think, Opsa? What were your impressions of this book?
I really enjoyed our discussions about it. That is the highest praise I can give right in this moment.
Sure.
I think it obviously had a really strong, compelling central idea of the duplicates, essentially the multiples, and the question of identity that's raised by that, and how you make decisions when you are strapped for rations.
Yep.
As basically the two of them were the whole time.
That's
and
right.
was the main conflict that they experienced.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brutally honest. I am glad to be done with this book.
Mhm.
I think it had its high points. I also think it kind of failed to totally deliver on that really fascinating concept.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are a few characters that are introduced even kind of late in the book. Kat is the most notable of those, and ultimately feels like a pretty weak plot device. And
Yep.
I don't know that I have much more to say than that. She really has no independent drives or motivations, it
Yeah.
seems, than to be essentially the one to reveal the existence of the duplicate Mickeys.
That's right.
I'm also a little disappointed because being one of the only other female characters in the book, she basically only serves as a minor love interest, if you could even call it that.
Yeah, right. The love triangle didn't even finish forming.
They didn't
yet.
complete it. It's just 3 lines. It's poor geometry.
Disconnected, just 3 floating lines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on reflection, the book basically fails the Bechdel test,
Truly. Truly, yeah.
Yeah. I will say, I did laugh out loud at Marshall's rant at the 2 Mickeys, and I'll just quote it briefly.
Oh, yeah, this is great.
Quote, "Set aside the fact that one of you should have gone back into the cycler the goddamn second that you realized that you'd become a multiple. For the love of all that's holy, Barnes, you were having relations with one another. You are a monster, and you're both going into the cycler."
People are. I think it's really the threesome.
It's the threesome that's
not
gotten
the
all
multiple.
of them. It's nothing to do with any of it but the threesome that gets them. Which, I mean, that's comedy.
I don't. I need to know which war made threesomes
Yes.
outlawed in this culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really what it feels
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
The
yeah.
hang up is
Yeah,
barely
that was
about
the bubble butt
multiple.
war. It
Oh my god! Great
yeah,
quote,
I don't know.
great
Anyways,
quote.
you tell me what are you feeling now as we've wrapped up this book?
Gosh, I mean, I feel the same as
Yeah.
you. I'm happy to be done with this book. It was a fun journey,
Yeah.
mostly because I loved our conversations about it.
Yeah.
I loved the interactions we had. We had some great convos in Discord
Totally. Yeah.
with our listeners about it. If those things hadn't existed and I had just read this book in a vacuum myself alone, I don't know that I would have even finished the book, to be fair. I did like this ending, it was fun.
Yeah.
Obviously it was kind of fluffy and simple as far as conclusions go to a story, but it was a good time. And I enjoyed Mickey bluffing with Marshall.
Totally.
As always, again, though, the historical stuff, that stuff about the bubble war,
Yes.
the history of the colonization efforts, just overshadowed everything else.
Totally.
Just so much more interesting than
Totally.
everything else going on in the book. I was less offended by the threesome and more so found it to just kind of be dumb.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the end of the book, it's clear that we're rushing frantically to a conclusion.
Definitely.
We're just leaving entire characters and plot
Yes.
threads dangling
Yes.
to the wayside.
Yeah.
Cat, as you already stated.
Yeah.
What was the point of Cat outside
Right.
of plot device?
Yeah.
Even Berto, though, remember him?
Yeah. Who?
We didn't mention Berto a single
Yeah.
time in the summary
Yeah.
because, like, what is there to really mention?
There's nothing to say.
They, like, apologize, I guess, sort of,
Yeah.
and make up.
Yeah.
Not much to do there at all with his character. You could have honestly taken Berto out of this story and practically nothing would have changed.
Yeah.
So ending felt rushed. A lot of stuff just kind of fell by the wayside to get to it. And I kind of walk away being like, maybe I approached this book wrong. Maybe this is a me problem. Because I came into this book and I learned about the premise in the first 6 chapters in our first episode. And I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
This could be like a deep philosophical exploration of the human soul.
Yeah.
About self-consciousness.
Yes.
It wasn't.
It wasn't that.
It wasn't that.
No.
It just kind of ended up being a very simple, lighthearted adventure story.
Yeah.
And maybe if I came into the book expecting a simple, lighthearted adventure story, I'd enjoy it more.
Right.
Because looking at it from that lens, I can appreciate that Ashton took what could have kind of been like an extremely simplistic and somewhat boring adventure he heightened it a bit with the philosophical layers on top.
Yeah.
A bit about the ship of Theseus, a little bit of
Right.
Kant
Right.
thrown in there.
Yeah.
So I think rather than be its most simplistic form, Ashton did elevate it a little bit. So from that lens, I can appreciate the work that was put in.
Oh, tempting.
Ultimately, I'm not walking away completely satisfied with having read this book. It didn't really kind of didn't blow my mind in any way or anything. It gave us some fun ideas to chew on, and
sure.
it kickstarted some fun conversations,
Definitely.
like the cloning conversation
Yeah.
from last week. But ultimately, I think the meal of this book was empty calories, and I'm not walking away full and satisfied and enriched.
Yeah.
Like I would have hoped.
Well, it's okay. We'll go to Chipotle after this and make up for that.
Yes. That new honey Chipotle chicken.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
Ooh, it's
Okay. All right.
Sponsor us, Chipotle. All right, Obsa. Summaries out of the way. Impressions of the book out of the way. Let's take a quick breather.
Yeah.
And when we come back, we'll get into some of our takeaways and dig into some ideas. Because again, the conversations that we've had about the book have been very enjoyable. And I'm looking forward to today's as well.
I'm excited about this.
We'll be right back, folks.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Uh-oh, the last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
All right, welcome back, folks. Let's get into, I think, the best part of our episodes, the takeaway.
I love these. Yeah.
Abu, why don't you kick us off here?
Okay, so for my takeaway, I want to take a few moments here to discuss this question of multiples.
Yes.
I, in particular, want to hone in on why Mickey7 and Mickey8 are so, like, inexplicably different.
Right.
Even though they're copies of the same person with the
Right.
same downloaded memories.
Right.
And as a fun twist, I want to compare this to how Severance plays with a similar idea and how I think Severance handles a similar idea and similar themes way better than this book. And for what it's worth, folks, if you haven't watched Severance and you're not caught up with season 2, what I'm going to say about Severance is like very vague and non-spoiler. I don't think you have to worry. I'm not going to reveal anything about the show. Just make sure you watch it. It's great. So I want to start by actually sharing an observation from one of our listeners, Audrey, in Discord. I thought this was great. Audrey wrote, quote, we really don't know what else was in those 6 weeks of unuploaded memories besides Mickey safely being carried with terrifyingly sharp jaws to a tunnel exit. I found it interesting, but not really believable that one event like that could change or create a new core value in 7 that 8 and all previous versions of Mickey didn't have. End quote.
Yes.
Nailed it.
Yes. Preach. 100%.
Absolutely nailed it. I could not agree more with Audrey's criticism here. Mickey7 and Mickey8 throughout this whole book have often felt like completely different characters.
Yes.
And the book really takes no steps toward justifying why.
Yeah.
Or even exploring why, right? Like,
Right.
maybe the book is making some sort of commentary on nature versus nurture, and Mickey's 8's existence is different, even if his nature is the same as
Right.
7's. It doesn't really take any steps toward that, though.
No.
You know, like, I hesitate to even read into that as something the book is trying to say, because it really doesn't. It doesn't even
No.
approach
No.
that idea. And so me as the reader, I'm left befuddled.
Yes.
Why 7 and 8 are so dramatically different. And
Yeah.
as Audrey has stated here, when it comes to genocide of the creepers, why the two would have polar
Such
opposite core
different-
values.
Yeah, totally.
Why is 7 hesitant?
Right.
And 8's like, why are you,
We
what,
love
what are you getting
genocide.
twisted about?
Yeah,
Let's
totally.
just blow this bomb.
Yeah, totally.
They're the same Mickey and have up to at least Mickey 6
Yeah.
the same exact
Right.
experiences.
Right.
And we're not told what dramatically changed in 6 weeks to justify that divide.
Yeah.
And I, for one, simply don't believe that Mickey being saved by one creeper one time, Mickey7 being saved,
Right.
would dramatically change his whole opinion on this genocide mission they're sent on.
Right.
So it's not satisfying. And in fact, I think sort of like zooming out, right? That in particular is one example about the genocide and the bombs. I think just zooming out, the book really fails to even explore this premise of multiples.
Yeah. For all intents and purposes, they could just be twins. Like, there's nothing that actually
That
speaks
makes
to
them
them being.
multiples, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
That's such a great point.
Yeah.
These two characters could just be like
brothers.
brothers.
Yeah.
You know, like we've honestly, like, besides the start of the book where it's like a thing they have to figure out,
Yeah.
they just like drop the whole fact. The book just kind of forgets the whole fact of
Yeah.
multiples, and which is really disappointing. There's so much depth there to mine.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And the book does not mine it.
Yeah.
Even in the reading today, there's a moment where I was like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah.
We're getting into it.
Yeah.
Because they're in prison.
Yes.
And Mickey7 tries to like grapple with this.
Right.
With his
Right.
very existence.
Right.
And he says to 8, quote, all the bits about immortality, that was all bullshit. This is it. The past 6 weeks are the only life I get, and the last few days are the only life you get. We're fucking mayflies. And when Marshall shoves us down the corpse hole, that's it for us. I don't care if he pulls 9 out of the tank or not, because even if he does, 9 won't be me.
Boom.
End quote. And I was like, let's go. We're doing it. We're finally doing the philosophy. We're having this character examine his whole life as and
give us the monologue. Let's hear it. I want to hear it. Where do you go next, Mickey? Where do you go next?
And then Mickey 8 literally says, whatever.
Yeah. Yes. So deep. What does he mean? That's the thing. What does he mean, though? Yeah, it's disappointing.
I wanted to close the book at that point. Like, we like approached it. We approached like actually getting into the premise of this book and then immediately backed off. Like, almost like the book is like too afraid to actually say anything about its own premise. It's really disappointing. I think it ultimately, having now read the whole book cover to cover, right? I expressed this worry pretty early on that the book would do this. Now I can definitively say that the book utterly fails to do justice to its own incredibly fascinating premise.
Yeah, that sucks.
Such a good premise, and the book fails to take it anywhere, really. Outside of using it for gimmicks like love triangles and threesomes,
Right.
It doesn't mine any of the actual depths of the concept.
Right.
And, you know, this is where Severance comes in. This is where I want to very briefly bring in Severance to wrap up my thoughts here. Folks, the best television show I've seen in years, Severance, takes a very similar concept to the nth degree and continuously blows your mind with the possibilities. The show tackles a similar idea. There's innies and outies in the show, one person with two consciousness. And there are some horrifying questions and themes tackled in the show about consciousness, about bodily autonomy, who has right to a body, about the ethics of this very technology.
Totally.
What is it used for? How is it used?
Yeah.
What restrictions could be put on it? How could it be abused?
Totally. Capitalism, the exploitation of workers. There's so much there.
So much there.
Yeah.
And this is why the Alan Manikova chapter was so interesting,
Totally.
because we're asking some of these questions.
Yes.
How can expendables be abused?
Yeah.
What are the dangers?
Yeah.
What restrictions should we put on it?
What are the loopholes? I mean,
What are
there's
the
a lot.
loopholes?
Yeah.
There's so many questions around this
Yeah.
that just like don't exist in this book.
Well, why would we touch those? Those are too interesting.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
Severance even puts its characters who are dealing with this issue of one body, two minds, in like deeply uncomfortable situations that lead to poignant questions in a non-spoiler way. All I'll say is, like, for example, there's a moment where one character's wife kisses their innie, their alternate self, their alternate persona. And that's the moment where I paused and went, is that cheating?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And that's the question, and the characters are like, is this cheating though?
Yeah. Totally.
And again, similar ideas here. Is Nasha cheating on 7 with 8? What is the threesome? None of them actually even tackle the emotional depth of even if you're going to have a threesome, there's still emotional baggage there. 7 was like kind of jealous throughout the book, and then he's like, fine.
Yeah, it ends up being a half-page experience, basically.
Yeah.
And then nothing. There's no repercussions. There's no fallout. There's no emotional depth there to plumb. You know, it's just...
Nobody's asking these questions.
No.
Like, shouldn't 7 be more jealous?
Right.
Shouldn't 7, from the very start of the book, have been, like, protective of Nasha and been like, hey, bro, like, Nasha's my girlfriend. I'm the one who's been dating her for 8 years.
Right.
None of that, you know? Like, they're seemingly, like, really passé about it. And
Yeah.
so that's just one example. So there are many other Severance examples that, for sake of spoilers, I don't want to get into. But Severance takes this idea of, like, what does it mean to have split personas that share a body? Not exactly the same thing as an expendable, but thematically, it gets into many of the same ethical and moral dilemmas of having two copies of the same human.
Yes.
This book fails to get to that level of scrutiny and to get as interesting as something as incredible as Severance does.
Yeah.
And ultimately, that left me quite disappointed. I wanted more.
Didn't we all? Yeah.
So that's my takeaway. And I took a peek at your takeaway, and it seems like this dovetails quite nicely into yours. So I'll hand the mic to you. What's a big idea you wanted to drill into?
So yeah, if you were disappointed that we didn't get to explore some of the really rich depths of the thought experiment kind of at the heart of this book, well, boy, do I have the takeaway for you.
Let's go. Let's do it.
So for my takeaway, I want to explore the teletransportation paradox that inspired Edward Ashton's short story Backup, and later, of course, Mickey7.
Mm-hmm.
As a side note, I am no longer going to say teletransportation and just say teleportation because it's 2025 and teletransportation is a mouthful.
It's a mouthful,
I will say.
Who's got the time?
Who's got the time? So, a little backstory. Philosopher Derek Parfit first named and elaborated this thought experiment in his 1984 book, Reasons and Persons, which I incidentally bought last year and found myself totally consumed by for weeks.
Oh, wow.
Despite its academic arguments and prose, the book offers fascinating, mind-bending ideas, just like this teletransport. I said it, didn't I? Well, you got me, Mr. Parfit. In any case, it explores ethics, meta-ethics, identity, the space between these, and has actually a number of thought experiments, including a split kind of custody situation.
Oh, cool.
A
A la Severance.
A la Severance. But before sharing the original thought experiment as he wrote it, it's fairly short, so I'll share it in its entirety. I'll pose this question to our listeners and to you, Abu.
Okay.
If teleporters...
Yep, I'm in.
I knew it. And I can hear the yes from all of you already.
The resounding yes from the audience. Sorry, continue.
I'll ask it, though. If teleporters became as commonplace as today's planes, trains, cars, subways, readily accessible and affordable, would you use one? No more daily commutes,
Yep.
the possibility of seeing loved ones in person at any moment, the freedom to experience parts of the world otherwise inaccessible in your lifetime. Would you embrace this tech?
Absolutely. That raises a ton of questions for me, a ton of caveats. Is it safe?
Yeah.
Is it accessible?
Yeah.
Is it cheap? Is
Yeah.
this a rich person only thing?
Sure.
A lot of questions around the tech.
Yeah.
But again, you've positioned it as being as commonplace as taking a train or a subway,
Yeah.
which I do take every day. So if it were that commonplace and I just swipe my Metro card and I get in the teleporter
That's
and
right.
I go work in my office in Singapore,
Exactly.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think this would be one of the most fascinating game-changing technologies in human history. And quite frankly, I'm curious if our readers have any recommendations for us. I've never read a sci-fi story that tackles the idea of how teleportation would fundamentally change
Yeah.
the landscape of human society.
Totally. Yeah.
Like internet globalized the world
Yes.
in a wild way.
Yes.
Teleportation
Is next
would make
next
the
level.
world like meaningless.
Yeah.
If every country and every doorstep is just a blink away and
Yeah.
one MetroCard swipe
Right.
away.
We're all citizens of the same
We're all
of humanity.
Do
you know,
borders
right.
matter anymore?
Exactly.
Like
Right.
what does sovereignty mean for countries?
Yes, totally.
A lot of fascinating sci-fi questions to be asked about teleporter technology.
Yeah.
But my answer is yes. If they were as safe and as commonplace as me taking the subway to work, I'd absolutely teleport.
Yeah. And honestly, I've asked this question of a lot of people over the last year, and I will say every single person has answered likewise. And I think it's pretty intuitive. Of course.
Of course.
It's like a universal yes. You know? All right. So now let's hear the paradox as Derek
I feel like you're about to
Parfit.
explain to me why I should have said no.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's do it.
So as Parfit wrote about it, it's from chapter 10, What We Believe Ourselves to Be.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, I will say teletransporter in his,
Right, 'cause you're
I'm going to be
quoting.
okay. All right. All right. Quote, I enter the teletransporter. I have been to Mars before, but only by the old method, a spaceship journey taking several weeks. This machine will send me at the speed of light. I merely have to press the green button. Like others, I am nervous. Will it work? But I remind myself what I've been told to expect. When I press the button, I shall lose consciousness and then wake up at what seems a moment later. In fact, I shall have been unconscious for about an hour. The scanner here on Earth will destroy my brain and body while recording the exact states of all of my cells. It will then transmit this information by radio. Traveling at the speed of light, the message will take 3 minutes to reach the replicator on Mars. This will then create out of new matter a brain and body exactly like mine. It will be in this body that I shall wake up. Though I believe that this is what will happen, I still hesitate. But then I remember seeing my wife grin when at breakfast today I revealed my nervousness. As she reminded me, she has been often teletransported and there is nothing wrong with her. I press the button. As predicted, I lose and seem at once to regain consciousness, but in a different cubicle. Examining my new body, I find no change at all. Even the cut on my upper lip from this morning shave is still there.
Okay.
This is where things start to get a little wicked.
Oh, God.
Several years pass, during which I am often teletransported. I am now back in the cubicle, ready for another trip to Mars. But this time, when I press the green button, I do not lose consciousness. There is a whirring sound, then silence. I leave the cubicle and say to the attendant, "It's not working. What did I do wrong?" "It's working," he replies, handing me a printed card. This reads, "The new scanner records your blueprint without destroying your brain and body. We hope that you will welcome the opportunities which this technical advance offers." The attendant tells me that I am one of the first people to use the new scanner. He adds that if I stay for an hour, I can use the intercom to see and talk to myself on Mars. "Wait a minute," I reply. "If I'm here, I can't also be on Mars." End quote. And this kind of messes with your mind a little bit.
Oh my God.
This reveals the paradox's essence. A teleporter that perfectly destroys and replicates your matter elsewhere seems, despite initial discomfort, to offer more pros than cons.
Yeah.
Yet the moment you perform the same procedure without destroying the original, suddenly it casts a new light on the procedure entirely. The question of identity becomes almost viscerally painful to grapple with.
Yes.
Our intuition simply wasn't designed to reconcile such conflicting states of being. So how does Parfit resolve the paradox? His argument isn't easy to unwind, but I'll try to shed some light on its core insights. One key lies in examining whether future you and present you share the same identity. And I'll ask that of you. Is your future self, Abu 2099, the same as Abu, whatever year you're listening to this episode?
Yes.
You would say yes, that they are identical, the same. You have the same identity today as you have 30 years from now.
Well, I think as a person, I would have changed and grown given 90 years, whatever the math is,
Sure.
to 2099, 50 years of experience or whatever.
Right.
I think I would be a different person because of that experience. But I think I guess the soul would still be me, a singular continuity. I would still be the same soul just 50 years from now.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I think there's a lot of nuance in that. And I think for some, if you probe it deeply, you might conclude perhaps not, that they're not identical. But as you said, the future you certainly bears a relation to present you.
Right,
Like
some
there's
connection.
Absolutely some connection between the two of you. But of course, all the experiences in between the two will make future you different in countless ways.
Oh, yeah.
Making that identity similar, but not identical to your present
No,
one.
not identical. Not one for one. Right.
Certainly not.
Much grayer.
A little grayer.
Hopefully I age like fine wine and much hotter.
Yes, exactly. So let's hold that key in our minds.
Okay.
All right. A second key might best be understood through analogy. There's an ancient wisdom that you die twice. Once when your body perishes, and again when your name is spoken for the final time.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that teach us? That our identities also transcend our physical forms.
Yeah.
Our existence radiates into the minds, memories, behaviors, and thoughts of everyone we encounter. In a profound sense, we already exist as multiples. None of those replicas are perfectly identical to us, but we've already made peace with that regarding our future and present selves, of course.
Right.
There's a relationship between them.
There is, yeah.
Those two keys together suggest a somewhat profound difference in our conventional understanding of ourselves.
Uh-huh.
We exist distributed across geography and time. The different versions of ourselves aren't exactly equivalent to the being we inhabit in this present moment, obviously.
Right.
The me or I that I experience right now has sensations and feelings and emotions and behaves in ways that exist only in this instant.
Right.
I can't feel the pain or joys of my future self right now, or the courage or joy I bring to a loved one in a different city.
Mm-hmm.
But the pattern, the essence, the soul of our being extends far beyond the boundaries of our present bodies. And perhaps we should value all of those versions as much as our present selves.
Oh my God, yeah.
Mickey 8 and OPSA 82 and Abu 99 are just as important and valuable as the versions that came before. So revisiting the thought experiment through this lens, is that clone of yours truly you? Parfit would answer, depending on your framing of the question, of course not. But it's essentially a non-question. Just as future you differs from present you, it's not identical to you.
Right.
So too does the duplicate you differ from original you.
Yeah.
Should you then enter the teleporter? Perhaps, perhaps not. The choice remains yours. But if the question becomes whether the person who enters the teleporter is the same as the one who exits, I'll echo Mickey and Parfit and call bullshit. The same, however, applies to the person who goes to sleep and the one who wakes.
Ooh.
The uncomfortable or maybe encouraging truth, you're already being teleported one moment to the next and have been your entire life.
Oh my God. Banger, Opsa. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-bending when you think about it,
Yeah.
And it's kind of tough to grapple with, but I will say I personally find it encouraging. It honestly...
I found that very beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the author talks about it a bit in the book, I should say, Derek Parfit talks about it in Reasons and Persons a bit later, but it actually helped him grapple with the thought and concept of death.
Yeah.
He ultimately kind of came to realize or to experience or feel, even if it kind of defied his intuition, that when he quote unquote dies, when his mortal flesh returns to the earth, well, he still exists on, you know, in the hearts and minds of the people that he has touched. And I find that also pretty encouraging.
Yeah. I thought that was first of all, amazing takeaway. I thought that was a beautiful sentiment. And yeah, I mean, even like Abu 99, I feel like a kinship with.
Yes.
I feel a connection to because I don't know. I guess I would consider us to be connected. You know the difference there, though.
Yeah.
The question of you 50 years from now, are you... to me, there's a continuity there. Like there's an expectation that I exist for those 50 years connected and become that person eventually. That, though, is different from Mickey's existence of here and now I am split into two people, or there are two copies of myself, and we are now both on two different trajectories of existence.
Totally.
I guess that raises the question of self-consciousness. Like how do you identify that you are a human being existing and perceiving the world? And if there's another version of you, you don't perceive and exist in that person's perspective.
Definitely don't. You only perceive and exist in your current one.
Yeah.
But the same is true of your future self. You can't perceive or experience that future self.
Oh,
the continuity thing is a little bit of a red herring, I will say. Because
right.
ultimately, the truth is you can't experience future self. And there's, like if you want to buy into the multiverse, kind of idea, it's all sorts of directions that future, yous are kind of going
there's
in.
There's infinite Abu 99s.
That's right.
That I'll never experience. And in fact, I'll only
ever
experience one of them, like the one that's me eventually.
That's right. So the clone of you has its own version of experience and its own identity and sensations. But to some extent, he describes it at some point as what matters is survival and the relation between those different yous and your present you.
Yeah.
So it's the essence, it's the soul, it's the pattern. The pattern of you is what you want to live on, but you don't get to live. There is no immortality, and you don't get to live every version of the. You only get this one, you know, and you feel strongly like, oh wait, but I am all those other ones, and you are, but you really only have this one that you experience the sensations of, and have the emotions.
Oh my gosh,
the mind of.
Right, but again, in sort of a very beautiful way, I do feel connected to all those other versions.
Totally. So pour one out for Mickey 8.
Perhaps we shouldn't have been so cruel. Actually, rest in peace, my guy.
Rest in peace, okay? You genocidal mofo.
Wow. What a great takeaway. gives you a lot to think about. And certainly, if you were a multiple, would give you a lot to think about. You know, maybe Mickey has not quite read the works of Parfit.
Yeah. I will say, perhaps we are, however, multiples already.
That's right. Okay. Let's step out of the heady stuff and get back down to ground level.
That's right.
We got to rate this book. It's the last episode on this book.
Yeah.
We end on a rating. What are you giving this out of 5 stars?
Yes. I guess 5? Is that the... Okay. All the way.
Whatever
it goes
system
all the
you
way
feel
up
like
to
you're using today, you know? Whatever multiple of you wants to use, whatever system is appropriate.
I've moved on to a color-based system. I'm feeling really purple about this. This is squarely in the realm of tangerine. No. So again, this is obviously purely subjective and personal. I think plenty of people would find lots of things to enjoy in this book. We did find things, of course, that we liked.
Yeah.
And it was entertaining, you know, certainly at times.
Yeah.
But you know, if I had to rate this, I'd give it a 2.25 out of 5 antimatter bubble butt bombs. Much like the author, I definitely find the teleporter paradox, technically the teletransporter paradox, fascinating.
Yeah.
And the question of duplicates really perspective bending.
Yes.
But as a reader, I was a little disappointed. I think the characters and plot were sacrificed at the altar of one really cool idea, and it suffers as a story and a novel as a result of that.
Yeah.
I'm happy we weren't left hanging at the end of the book. There is a conclusion, even if it feels somewhat rushed, but that is my rating.
Okay. Fair.
Boo, hit me with it.
I'm going to give this book a rating of 2.5 Alan Manikovas out of 5 Alan Manikovas.
Oh, the character we needed more of. Give us 2 planets of Alan Manikovas.
Do it. I'm ready. Yeah, you know what? I think I phrased my thoughts last episode as I'm 50-50 on this book, and I strongly know where the dividing line is, and it's the past chapters versus the present chapters.
Right.
So that's why I'm going to also give this squarely down the middle, 2.5 out of 5.
Excellent.
If you took all the present chapters out of this book, I'd love the history of human colonization and the story of Alan Manikova.
Totally.
And I would love a short 150-page novella that explored the diaspora. All the present day stuff, I literally could barely get through for these episodes. You know, you and I read and reread and then take notes and read again. I often get the audiobook so that I can listen again because sometimes I retain different information from audio. So I'll be honest, on my rereads and re-listens, I was fucking skipping the present day chapters. That's how much I was bored reading them.
Yeah, that's funny.
So that's my justification for why I'm going to squarely split this down the middle, 2.5.
Yeah. Honestly, that's an excellent system. I might have to steal that.
Yeah. But if we were to use your color system, I'm feeling cyan about this book.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. All right. Very good. Very good. Or very, I don't know.
Right. However
feels
that system
like
works.
right down the middle.
All right, folks. That wraps up our journey with Mickey7.
That's right.
We have another book.
Indeed we do.
Up next. So for the next episode of this podcast, here's your homework. Make sure that you have read chapters 1 through 4 of Artificial Condition by Martha Wells.
Oh, yeah.
That is book number 2 in the Murderbot Diaries.
Excited for this one.
I'm excited for this one. We've already covered book number 1, by the way. So if you're like, why the fuck are you jumping into 2? Go back in the feed.
Go back and listen.
We already covered book 1, and now we're getting into the second novella. And also, I hope everyone's excited. We will be covering the Murderbot TV show
on Apple TV+.
TV Plus that's coming out soon as well. Yeah. That's actually why we decided to read Artificial Condition.
That's right.
In preparation for that show. We'll be covering that on the pod. Hope you're looking forward to our coverage of that show as well. And of course, if you're like, what show? When does it come out? What chapters do I read? Oh my God, so much information. I'm still hung up on the teletransportation thing Opsa was talking about. Not to worry. check out the link in the show notes below. We always, in every episode, share the reading schedule for the entire season with due dates, chapters, what books to read, all that good stuff, so that you can stay on top of it.
Well, friends, don't be a monster
No.
destined for the biocycler, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yes.
Be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, as a creeper once put it, burp.
Can you stop sleep texting me, Obsa?
Must contend with the teleporter. Parfait.